One of the philosophies that not a lot of people have heard about, but I think is super interesting, is the philosophy of pragmatism. It's kind of an old one by a philosopher called William James, and so I would like to explain that to you now. I remember when I was in university and we were studying philosophy, two of the first things we learned was, the first one was this one on the left, the brain in the vat. Have you heard of that before? It was this experiment that said, how do we know that our experiences aren't just electrical impulses somewhere else and everything that we see now is fake? Then the second experiment that we came across was the cogito ergo sum experiment by Rene Descartes. And he was saying a very similar thing. He was basically saying, how do we know that all our experiences aren't real and they're not manipulated by some evil demon? And then the cogito ergo sum basically said, if I'm thinking, there has to be something there, so I have to be real, whether I'm a brain in a vat or whether I'm a real person or whatever. But apart from these experiments, the question that I was thinking of is, what the hell is the damn point? So I remember in our classes, we would be discussing these questions, and my response was always something like this. Okay, let's say we are a brain in the vat. Let's say we are manipulated by an evil demon. What practical difference does that have to do with my life? I still have to go to work. I still have to take care of my friends and family and eat food and exercise and all these kind of things. Practically speaking, these experiments don't make a difference to my experience, my reality. And that is exactly the question that William James was trying to answer. Imagine you have a fire. Statement: a fire burns. Okay, a couple things going on there. A fire is this thing that lights up the night, and when you put your hand near it, it burns your hand. So, for James, he says this: the point of inquiry is to maximize your flourishing as to not get burnt. And he uses this word flourishing quite a lot. It's an important one to remember. It means your improvement of your life, the practical differences that philosophical statements can make in your life. And so when we think of statements like a fire burns, or the cogito ergo sum, or the brain in the vat, we have to ask the question of, what practical difference or consequence are these statements making to my everyday experience? He says this: to attain perfect clearness in our thoughts of an object, we need only consider what conceivable effects of a practical kind the object may involve. That's the important part here. Conceivable effects of a practical kind. Remember, the philosophy is called pragmatism. And so that's the point, right? You have philosophical statements. What effects of a practical kind, what effects in your everyday life are these statements going to have on your experience? So, in three simple words, philosophy is use. And some of you out there are probably thinking, wait a second, that sounds a little bit weird, because if a philosophy could be useful, but it might not be true. He addresses this as well. So philosophy is use. Let's have a look. So I'm from Melbourne. That's where I am. It's like Australia, and I'm right at the bottom. And I was kind of born in the suburbs or the city, so a fairly urban lifestyle. But I know there are some people that live in the country, which is hours away, and it's a very different lifestyle. You're not surrounded by people all the time, and you mostly have to work with your hands, a different type of work, and it's a different type of lifestyle, really, in your everyday life. So James had this idea of the Welton Show. It's an idea that I personally really love. It's a general view of the world. So in other words, a perspective. And he said, your Welton Show, your perspective of the world, is shaped by your experiences, and your experiences provides a kind of framework which you operate by and which you act by. So your belief system seems fairly self-explanatory, except for this. Number 1, the Welton Show doesn't need to be scientific or technical. I don't know, let's say you're born in the country and your name for trees is something else. You call it something else, and you don't have a scientific explanation for why the crops grow at this particular time, but they just do. And James said, that's fine. Keep that. 2, he said all beliefs help you navigate the world. Remember, in pragmatism, navigating the world and understanding the world by your worldview is the point. So any beliefs, whether they be true or not, can help you navigate the world and help make your experience a little bit better. So he says this: what is true for me is what is good for me to believe. Okay, some alarm bells ringing there. It certainly did for me when I first heard this. What is true for me is what is good for me. So if there is a belief that is good for you, then that belief is going to be true for you. Or is he saying true for you, or is he saying true for everybody? That's another question. So here you can see the philosophy is a little bit more pluralist. So it accepts a lot of different perspectives and points of view. And it's one of the philosophies that people use for religion a lot when they want to justify religion. So, question: sounds like a crazy philosophy that what is true is what is good. Is that necessarily always the case? He does have a little caveat that helps explain it a little bit. For a belief to have good consequences, it must be answerable to observation. And I think for me, that statement kind of settles pragmatism a little bit. It helps it make a bit more sense. So if you're going to have a belief that has good consequences, well, that belief would have to line up with the things that we can observe with our empirical experiences. I guess if you follow the trail of consequences of a false belief, it never goes to a good place. Hey guys, I just want to say thank you for watching this video. If I can be honest with you, the last 2 years have been really hard and hectic, and it's always good to come back to these videos and just get what's off my mind. And it really helps me when you watch my videos as well. So I just wanted to say thank you so much for watching these videos, and I hope to see you on the next one.